The avatar is an object of worship and is the manifestation of divinity that descends on earth to destroy evil. The commonest English translation of the term is incarnation, literally the being made flesh, and with this is also associated the idea of cyclical appearance of divinity. Vishnu, the preserver of the world, is part of the Trinity. He is the preserver of the world, is said to have descended on earth in various avatars. Commonly, there are 10 avatars. That's the dwarf avatar, that's the man-lion avatar, the boar avatar, the tortoise avatar, the fish avatar. Then there's Parashurama, Rama, Krishna. I'm sure many of you know about ISKCON and Hare Krishna will know Krishna. Buddha and, sorry. I always keep doing this. There's also this apocalyptic avatar who hasn't made an appearance, but who will come on his white horse with his sword, and he's called Kalki. He's going to come at the end of, well, perhaps something like the Day of Judgment, and purify the world and so on. Okay, so there are commonly 10 avatars, but sometimes there are 24 and, or even more, depending on which source you're looking at. Other gods, such as Ganesha and Shiva, also manifest themselves as avatars. This paper explores how the original avatar concept, taking in its fuller complexity from Hindu philosophy, is useful in understanding the video game avatar in terms of identity formation, because it includes within its conception the notion of multiple shared identities and cyclic recurrence. Avatar comes from the words ava and tree, meaning below, crossing. Thus, an avatar is the crossing down of a god to free humanity from evil. Jeff Parender identifies 12 characteristics of the Hindu doctrine of avatar. Avatars are real. If human, the early avatars of Vishnu bear non-human or semi-human forms. If human, they take worldly birth. They mingle divine and human. They die, they can die. There is a historicity to some avatars. They are repeated. They're often exemplars of proper living. They have a mission, and they guarantee divine grace. Sorry, I think I've gone on the wrong slide. Oops. Sorry about that. Further, the avatar is either a full manifestation of the deity or a partial one. It is also possible for the deity to manifest himself or herself as multiple avatars simultaneously. As an example of the latter, the brothers Krishna and Balaram, they coexist. They're both avatars, but they're brothers. And similarly, Rama, who is an avatar, meets Parashuram, who is a previous avatar. So there are two avatars meeting in the same lifetime. So the temporality is slightly confused and complicated. Okay. So the time schema of the avatar concept is complex. Unlike the one-time incarnation in Christian theology, the avatars in Hindu philosophy are cyclic, but they can also appear simultaneously and interact with one another. The other complexity is, of course, the relation between the deity himself or herself and the avatar as the manifestation of the deity. So what is Vishnu and what is his avatar? What is the what's the kind of relationship? For example, as Freda Matchett points out, what is the supreme reality, Krishna or Vishnu? Reviewing Matchett's work, Peter Schreiner sees a parallel with Christology, with the Christology question and problem. Matchett points out that the relationship between Vishnu and Krishna is something altogether more mysterious, the Ascharya, which means wonder, which reflects on earth the wonder that is Vishnu. So the kind of mediation between the avatar and the god is one that of wonder, which we cannot describe as such. And similarly, also describing the relationship of Rama to Vishnu. Rama is the avatar and Vishnu the god. Again, Rama is in fact totally human and totally divine, says Raimunda Panikkar. Rama is material and spiritual, temporal and eternal. So Morningstar's usage of the word is based on a very specific interpretation that seems, that, I quote, seemed an appropriate mapping, in the sense that we humans are like deities, at least external souls with respect to a virtual world that exists only inside a computer's simulation. That's Morningstar. As a history simulation website claims, with the popularization of the term, now it's not just Hindu gods who can descend upon different worlds, but people. Today, avatars come in the form of characters ready to fight in some virtual battlefield to the simple picture used to identify oneself in an internet forum. This brings me obviously to this picture, and in a recent popularization of the term, James Cameron describes it as follows for his film Avatar. It's an incarnation of one of the Hindu gods taking a flesh form. In this film, what that means is that the human technology in the future is capable of injecting a human's intelligence. You know, I'm sure most of you have watched Avatar, but says it's not an avatar in the sense of just existing as ones and zeros in cyberspace. It's actually a physical body. Jake, who is played by Sam Worthington, has his human existence and his avatar existence. So that's James Cameron. In a similar usage, a Second Life platform allows one to create an avatar that resembles your real life, I quote, or create an alternate identity. The only limit is your imagination. What do you want to be? That's what, again, there's another common. Okay, so I had a problem with the idea of immersion ever since I started working on player experience. And as I said earlier, immersion reminds me of a dip in the Ganges. In all of the above later conceptions of the avatar, the issue of identity and the avatar vis-a-vis that of the player is staggeringly simple. The player is the avatar, and vice versa. The avatar is the player. In the movie, for example, the protagonist finds it hard to settle. Oops. Bear with me. In the movie, the protagonist finds it hard to settle down. Settle into his avatar. But this is almost like trying on a new suit. Once he's used to his new body, the identification is seamless. The other conceptualizations, including Morningstar's mapping, assume a parallel to divine inspiration, literally a breathing life, inspirare, a breathing life into the body in the avatar concept. The player's consciousness, in an almost godlike manner, occupies a virtual body. The very concept of the avatar, however, resists such an easy identification. And by that I mean also the avatar in Hindu philosophy as well as in games. So Laurie Taylor, in her analysis of the game The Last Express, I believe, the essay is titled When Seams Fall Apart, and she's arguing against Janet Murray and earlier ideas of immersion. Taylor says, Wilmore, looking at himself in the mirror, assumes that the player subject has embraced Wilmore in such a way that Wilmore's looking, while outside the player herself, could be internalized by the player in terms of a representation of Wilmore as herself. Now the issue is basically what happens when the player as avatar looks at himself or herself in a mirror. There's a jar. The seamlessness kind of falls apart, as Taylor says. This is, of course, Jake's predicament in the film Avatar, and ultimately an advantage of his avatar is that he has regained the use of his feet, which he had lost in his real life. Identification with the avatar is not seamless, in that it always involves a mental acceptance of the constraints and differences of the avatar self and the real self. So by being an avatar, you already kind of admit or kind of feel the constraints. The avatar self, I argue, is therefore not a seamless identification or an immersion, understood as a submergence in a different medium, or in this case, a world. As Gonzalo Frasca states in 2006, the process of identification involves an outmersion, as in the realization that the player is also in a make-believe world, and a meta-outmersion, or the simultaneous realization that you're also outmersed. So instead of being immersed, Frasca says that you're also outmersed. You also feel yourself you're looking at yourself being immersed, and you also feel yourself as looking at yourself. So it's like a meta-outmersion that Frasca talks about. So, in fact, unlike Cameron's conceptualization of the avatar, the process of identification is not that of a human consciousness filling in a virtual body. The identification with the avatar automatically involves the awareness of the characteristics and affordances not only of the avatar's body, but also of the consciousness. A player of Assassin's Creed, therefore, has to share the consciousness of the avatars, Altair or Ezio, who have very different constraints, whether of character, psychology, or socio-historic environment. Unlike the avatar of Yahoo Messenger or a virtual body filled in by one's consciousness, the video game player identifies with the avatar in what has been called double consciousness by Salen Zimmerman, and later on by myself in multiple consciousness somewhere else. Even in the film Avatar, Jake the Marine's consciousness also exists in tandem with that of Jake as the Na'vi avatar. In the film, Jake is able to give up his human body at the end. We are not told whether his human consciousness is also gone. For the video game avatar and player, such a total absorption is not possible. Like the avatar in Hindu thought, the relation here is far more complex. So, whoops. Okay. So, moving on from the thinking of video game identity as a seamless transfer of consciousness mediated by the process of immersion, the process of identification has been linked to partial immersion by Ryan and involvement. Involvement in the sense used here needs unpicking. Gary Allen Fine's comments on fantasy gaming in terms of Erving Goffman's discussion of frame analysis is useful in starting to address these issues. Fine observes that Goffman describes social worlds as constituting frames of experience. He defines a frame as a situational definition constructed in accord with organizing principles that govern the events and the participants' experience of the events. So Goffman examines the links between links amongst the frames of involvement, how individuals pass from one frame to another. So player to avatar to to a different avatar. The process by which this happens is called engrossment by avatar. So by Goffman. Oh, okay. So for Fine, yeah, Goffman's the avatar, I guess. For Fine, such engrossment has an oscillating character, and the frames succeed each other with remarkable rapidity. Just as the player brings her special set of skills to the game environment is also invested with its own special set of information coded into it by way of rules. The player, whether involved in the game as a character or as a configurable element, has a multiple identity. These multiple identities work as supplements for each other, like Machet's position on Vishnu and Krishna in relation to the avatar question raised in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the holy book of Hindus, and the Puranas, other holy books of Hindus. The identities of the player and the avatar are supplementary. Now, by supplementary, I use supplement in a slightly different sense. I use supplement in the sense that Jacques Derrida uses it in essays That Dangerous Supplement or of Chromatology. As Royal says, Derrida explores the strange but necessary cohabitation of two significations of supplement. So supplement is conceived as an extra and exterior, but it is neither inside nor outside, and or both inside and outside at the same time. It forms part without being part. It belongs without belonging. So with that quick kind of, qualification of supplement, I actually move on to, previously I was given to using involvement as my understanding of the player experience. But I've come to a much better kind of term. I'm not wearing a T-shirt, Gordon, so I'll just put it on my slide. Incorporation. So Gordon uses incorporation, and as you can see, the player incorporates in the sense of internalizing or assimilating the game environment into consciousness, while simultaneously being incorporated through the avatar into that environment. So it's a bipartite thing, or multipartite thing, perhaps. Put another way, incorporation occurs when the game world is present to the player, while the player is simultaneously present via our avatar to the virtual environment. And I also probably would kind of go with the fact that, free cell or solitaire would provide different kind of issues to deal with here. Sorry? Yeah, sure. This formulation retains the traditional interpretation of the concept. Kaleja differentiates incorporation from involvement, in which he sees as occurring when any dimension of the player's experience requires the player's full conscious attention. For example, in case of a new player negotiating and struggling with the arrow keys. Okay, so very quickly now, this is Vishnu's multiple forms, his kind of his universal presence, which he shows Arjuna. Arjuna in the Gita refuses to fight, and Vishnu manifests himself in all his forms. So, at some times, the avatar of Krishna, in the avatar of Krishna, Vishnu is constrained by the worldly environments of being a cowherd. He dies, but at other times, he's different avatars. Okay, so, but the only difference from incorporation is probably there's no lesser involvement or greater involvement. The divine avatar exists as avatar. So, again, there are in some temples, for example, you'll see that Krishna's image occupies a separate place. But at the same time, in the same temple, you'll see Krishna in a series of, in a picture with lots of avatars together. So he's at the same time an avatar and a god, as Machet points out. So for me, this kind of being, this avatar, this experience for me is links to what I look at the Deleuze-Guattarian kind of idea of becoming, which is not a correspondence between relations. It is a resemblance. It's not a resemblance, but it is kind of a block of becoming. It's like an involution where the character is kind of involved in a. Well, I'll just explain the sense of involved, which is slightly different from. The idea of involution could be seen as linking with concepts such as incorporation, especially as the bipartite assimilation of the player into the game and vice versa cannot be seen as discrete events, but as a process which is important in itself and which occurs between and beneath the player and his or her avatar selfhoods. So this is the man-lion avatar Narasimha, where Vishnu comes in as part animal, part lion, part man, again showing this kind of idea of involution, in incorporation in certain ways, moving into the body. I look at kind of certain, etymological, definitions of incorporation, avatar, and incarnation. As you can see, I mean, incorporation is also to do with the body, the corpora, and incarnation. So there are kind of similarities that I look at here. I will speed up, so not very much left. But there's another little issue which I'll kind of just finish with, and this is that the avatar's occurrence is cyclic. Okay, so there's a quick video to play.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir-bhavati bharata.
So I'll just stop this. It says yada yada hi dharmasya glanir-bhavati bharata abhyutanam adharmasya tadatmanam sujanyam. It's basically that's the chant. So I did what the video was supposed to do very quickly. So okay. I could have had my sacred set somewhere if I have it. So basically, it says wherever righteousness exists, does not exist, I come back again and again. So there's this cyclic, this idea of the cyclic return of the avatar comes back again and again. And just very quickly, I mean, there's two clarifications. There is no, this has no pretensions to religious commentary. So if there are any Hindu, whatever, strong kind of, I'm not trying to offend anyone. It's just kind of a quick look. I don't want to say that Vishnu and video games are, well, anyway. So just kind of to quickly look at gave the kind of the disclaimer, because I'm looking at Assassin's Creed and the avatars of Desmond Miles as Ezio and Altair, who are all existing simultaneously, and the player exists as Desmond Miles, Ezio, and Altair. And that itself is kind of self-reflexively, the games talk about the process of incorporation in their plot itself. Desmond can be seen to be playing out his memories in the avatars of his ancestors. Various different memories result in different avatar instances, and Desmond is incorporated in the avatars, and they in him, literally through his genetic code and experientially, as he plays out their adventures as if in a video game. As players who play Assassin's Creed, of course, have a similar identification with Desmond himself, as well as with Altair and Ezio. The experience is a continual process of becoming Desmond, becoming Altair, becoming Ezio, and becoming player. In India, Avatar is a household word and has been so well for millennia, before its new usage in video games and its popularization in Cameron's movie. Despite Morningstar's borrowing from Indic philosophy, two usages seem disparate and yet similar. It was intriguing for me to see the player-character relationship in terms of the Hindu god and his manifestation, and also the idea of cyclic kind of recurrence, which also occurs in video game kind of identification. Thank you. Sorry.
So we are a bit out of time. If Mia can come here and while you prepare your computer, we have a time for one question, okay? One question? Okay, no question. Faster than.